Hi, my name is Leandro Facchinetti, and in this video I want to show you an effect that I created for Reaper called Automixer. And it's a modification on an existing effect that is the Automixer that you can install with Repack. I modified it to add a few features and change the way it works, and I want to show you how my modification works. So I have here in Reaper a session that is 4 microphones to show you what the Automixer is supposed to do for you. So in this situation, I have 4 people in the same room talking, 4 microphones, 1 microphone per person. And in this section here, just person number 1 is talking. But you can hear the microphone you can hear the voice of the person in all other microphones as the voice is bouncing around the room. So you will hear both the microphone that the person is speaking on and all other microphones as well. And then I will turn on the Automixer and it will adjust the gain on the different microphones such that the person is speaking on a microphone, so that microphone will have a higher gain than all the other microphones. And you will be able to hear the room going away. It's like magic. It's super cool. So I have here the Automixer already in place on this parent track. And I will show you later how to set everything up and how to install the Automixer and everything. But just so you know, here on the parent track, I have an instance of the modified version of the Automixer. That is my mod of the Automixer. I also have a leveler, just so you are not fooled by the differences in gain. You will be able to hear the effect of the Automixer without differences in volume. And I also have a limiter because I don't want to clip. So the Automixer, I will bypass it. So you'll be able to hear what just the microphones sound like. So you'll be able to hear just the microphones without the Automixer, and then in the middle I will turn on the Automixer and you will hear the effect that has on the tracks. So let's hear this conversation. Em vez de editar o podcast, eu resolvi fazer todo um plugin para edição de podcast e não editei o podcast para testar se o plugin está funcionando. Mas eu acho que eu vou editar o podcast antes de realmente divulgar o plugin.
Boa.
Para pelo menos ter certeza de que ele funciona para mim.
Sim.
So that's what the Automixer does when you have multiple microphones in one room and different people speaking in different microphones. Also, in this part of the conversation, we have some alternation between me and the other person. And you can see here when the Automixer is enabled that it's changing the gain on each channel accordingly. So when different people are speaking, it's changing and increasing and lowering the gain of the different microphones. So let's give that a listen. Realmente divulgar o plugin.
Boa.
Para pelo menos ter certeza de que ele funciona para mim.
Sim.
Fala várias coisas, vários sabores de muffins.
Chocolate,
eu vou falando outra coisa por cima e a gente vai vendo como é que o Automixer consegue resolver isso.
Tá.
Eu acho que deu de testes, é isso. So, as you can see, when multiple people are talking at the same time, the Automixer is adjusting the levels so that they all sound simultaneously. You can hear all of them, but they are never overwhelming. So I'll show this in Reaper's mixer. This part of the conversation where multiple people are talking at the same time, and you'll be able to see that the parent track's gain is at most the highest gain you see on the child tracks here. So if the first track is the one that is the loudest, then this parent track will be at most as loud as this track. So let's give that a listen and look at the meters.
Fala
várias coisas, vários sabores de muffins.
Chocolate,
eu vou falando outra coisa por cima e a gente vai vendo como é que o Automixer consegue resolver isso.
Tá.
Eu acho que deu de testes, é isso. So, of course, there is the leveler and the limiter in place. So even if the child are clipping, the parent is not. But the point here is the Automixer acts like it's one microphone being shared by the people in the room. So it's as if when someone else is speaking, you're handing that person the microphone. So the microphone, all the microphones in the room act as one, and it's the signal that comes out is never louder than any one of the microphones. And that guarantees that you have a good gain, even if multiple people are speaking at the same time. And then something like the tri-leveler or any other leveler or compressor or any other kind of effect, it will work on an input that is relatively stable. It's not going up and down as multiple people are jumping in and out of the conversation. So they work better. The compressors and tri-levelers and whatnot, they work better with a signal that has been automixed. So that's what the Automixer does. That's the point of this technology, and it's nothing new. As I said, this is inspired by a plugin that already exists in Reaper, an Automixer that already exists, which in turn is inspired by a set of tools developed, I guess, since the 70s or 80s. It's really old technology. But the idea behind it is just this. It's sharing the gain of the microphones. So microphones that are louder contribute more to the mix, and microphones that are quieter are understood to be noise in the room being picked up by the microphone. So these channels are lowered in gain. So that's what the automixing is. Now let's learn how to set it up in Reaper. And if you are already familiar with the existing Automixer, this new one is slightly more complicated to set up, but I think there are some benefits to this other setup. So let's look at how you can create this set of tracks that we have over here. So I will just recreate them from scratch. So what I have here are the 4 microphones. I'm going to drop them into Reaper onto separate tracks. And now I'm going to create a parent track to contain all these 4 tracks. Now the trick is, each one of these child tracks is going to be routed to the parent on different channels. So the parent will have to have more than 2 channels. It will no longer be just a stereo track. It will be a multi-channel track with more than 2 channels. So I'll have at least 2 channels per child. In my case, the signals that are coming in are actually mono. So but Reaper doesn't allow you to have a track that is mono, so I will have them as stereo tracks. But my plugin supports multi-channel children as well. So if you had 4 channels per child or 8 channels per child, that would also work. But in my case, I have stereo tracks as children, and I have 4 of them. So the parent has to be at least an 8-channel track. Okay, so now the track has 8 channels. And then I'm going to route this track to channels 1 and 2. This track to channels 3 and 4. These to channels 5 and 6. And the final one to channels 7 and 8. Okay, so now I can look at the routing matrix, or the track wiring, and I can see that the different tracks are going to the parent, but they are going to different channels in the parent. The routing matrix shows that as well. Okay, now that we have that setup in place, we can, if you try to just listen to this, you would just hear the first of the tracks. So,
eu resolvi fazer todo plugin.
You can see here the meters.
Para edição de podcast.
The meters are showing that
E não editei o
our routing is working. We have 8 channels.
podcast para testar esse plugin.
And the children are going to the different channels, but we on the headphones we are only hearing the first of these 4 tracks, because as the final output, the master output is just stereo. So it's just picking up the first 2 channels of this parent track. Well, now it's time for us to put the Automixer into the parent track. And now the setup is done.
Para edição de podcast e não editei o podcast para testar.
So now this is the setup. The plugin is different from the original Automixer, in case you know that one, in that the Automixer does not go in the children, multiple instances of Automixers in the children. That's not how this modification works. In this Automixer, I have only one instance in the parent, and the parent has access to all the children as multi-channel, as a multi-channel track. And that is all the setup you need. And in most cases, that's all you want to do, because the defaults in the Automixer work well for voice and dialogue and conversation. So that's probably all you have to do. But in case you want to go over here, the configurations, you have a bunch more options on how the Automixer is going to work. So first of all, this option is just to bypass, because as I said, if you tried to bypass the plugin itself, so if instead of bypassing using this option, you bypassed using this, then you would only hear the first channel, because that's how the multi-channel track works. So I have this option here to bypass the plugin in a way that is still going to mix all the channels, and you will hear all of them, but they will not be auto-mixed. The gain will always be the same and the maximum for all channels.
Para edição de podcast e não editei o podcast para testar se o plugin tá funcionando. Mas eu acho que eu vou editar o podcast antes de...
So yeah, so the gain here, when the plugin is bypassed here, but is active here, the gain is always at the maximum on all channels. And then you enable, and then the Automixer is going to adjust the gain.
Para edição de podcast e não editei o podcast para testar.
And you can see here on the meters that when you do this, when you enable this plugin, you go from having 8 channels active to having just 2 output channels active. So you are getting all the inputs, 8 channels, but you're only getting 2 outputs, the stereo output of the mixed channels. I will run this and then I will enable the plugin so you can see the meters going away.
Podcast, eu resolvi fazer todo plugin para edição de podcast e não editei.
Okay, so that's what the bypass is doing, and that's why I have a special bypass instead of just relying on the default bypass in Reaper. So you never want to bypass in Reaper, you want to bypass here using this option. Now, the next option here is in case you have children that are more than stereo, they are quadrophonic, they are 8 channels. I support up to 32 channels, and that's because Reaper allows you to have tracks that are 64 channels at most. So if I go here to routing, you'll be able to see that the most I can have on a track is 64 channels. So at most, this plugin is going to support children that are 32 channels, and in that case, you will have only 2 children that are 32 channels each, and that's the most this plugin can handle. By the way, that may be a reason for you to stick with the old Automixer if you want to use with tracks that are bigger than that. So if you have a track with 40 channels, or if you have 5 tracks of 32 channels, then the old Automixer will support that. This new one won't. But I don't think that's a constraint that many people have. But anyway, so here I'm handling this for children as stereo tracks. I could also increase this to say that they are 4 channel tracks, and now I have these 2 acting as one track in the Automixer, and these 2 acting as another track in the Automixer, and then in this case the output will also be 4 channels, it will be quadrophonic. We can see here in the meters.
Eu resolvi fazer todo plugin para edição.
You probably won't change this because most people are recording dialogue with mono microphones or at most stereo. So this is probably going to stay as 2. The reaction time is if you are familiar with these terms, this is the RMS size in milliseconds. So I can show you where this comes from. This idea comes from Recomp, a compressor that comes with Reaper, and it has this RMS size in milliseconds. This parameter is exactly the same as this one. And the idea here is we are listening to the channels to find their volume, and we look at small windows of time to determine the volume. And this is the size of that window. So if you have a window that is big, it's going to take a while for the Automixer to adjust the channels. It's going to be more conservative. The levels are going to stay put in place for longer. If your reaction time is very fast, then your window is small, and the Automixer is changing the channels really, really fast. Let's see this in action.
Antes de realmente divulgar o plugin.
Boa, boa.
Para pelo menos ter certeza de que ele funciona para mim.
Sim.
So you can see that as I increased the reaction time, the levels were more stable. They were in place. And when someone else speaks, it takes a little longer for the Automixer to adjust to that. So if you see that with the default, it should be fine. The default should be okay. But if you see that the defaults are not good because you can hear the Automixer increasing the gain as someone else speaks, maybe someone is laughing, and so that's a sharp increase in level, and you can hear the Automixer adjusting to that, or even you can see the fader going up, then you probably want to decrease this value. On the other hand, if you think that it's too finicky and you can hear the adjustments going really fast, or you can hear too much of the room because it's picking up some room noise really fast, then you want to increase this. And maybe if you have a clear alternation of just two people talking, one interviewer, one interviewee, and it's very clear when someone's stopping and someone else is starting, then maybe you want to increase the reaction time to have more stable levels. And if you go really extreme here, reaction time of 0 milliseconds, then you can even distort.
De que ele funciona para mim.
Sim.
Fala várias coisas, vários sabores de muffins.
Yeah, but you can go as low as like 50 milliseconds and it doesn't distort.
Sabores de muffins.
Chocolate.
Yeah, you can go really fast without distorting, but you can distort if you want. I don't know why you would want that, but you can. The strength is the amount of increase and decrease in levels that the Automixer is allowed to do. So by default, the strength is 1. If you want, you can increase the strength, and that's going to increase the louder channels and decrease the gain on the quieter channels even more. So I'm going to play this part and you can hear the effect, and you can see the effect here on the faders.
De editar o podcast, eu resolvi fazer todo um plugin para edição de podcast e não editei o podcast para testar se o plugin está funcionando. Mas eu acho que eu vou editar o podcast antes de realmente divulgar o plugin.
So you can see that as I increase the strength, you hear even less of the room because the microphone that is active is even more in front, and all the other channels are even more decreased in gain. So the effect is even more accentuated. And as people alternate when they're speaking, for instance, in this part where we are alternating, you will see the faders going up and down even more drastically.
Divulgar o plugin.
Boa, boa.
Para pelo menos ter certeza de que ele funciona para mim.
Sim.
And on the other side of the strength, if you think that the Automixer is too aggressive, you can lower this, and at the extreme, the strength is 0, so all the channels are fixed in this position. It doesn't matter the levels.
Tá funcionando, mas eu acho que eu vou editar o podcast antes de...
Yeah, it just stays fixed. We still want the idea of adjusting the gain, so the gain is not too extreme, so that the compressors and whatever comes after the Automixer, they work fine. So the strength of 0 is not the same as disabling the plugin, as bypassing it. You can see when you bypass the plugin, all the channels are always 100% gain. But when you enable the plugin and you take the strength to 0, the channels are divided. So if you have 4 channels, each channel is contributing 25% of the output. But a strength of 0 is probably too extreme. You probably want somewhere in the middle. If you think that the Automixer is too aggressive, then you can lower the strength just a little. And I must warn you that if you lower the strength, there is literally no way for me to guarantee that the output of the whole mix will be at most as loud as the loudest microphone coming in, because I am, well, decreasing the strength of the attenuation. So sometimes it may be the case that you hear something that is louder than each microphone. But yeah, it shouldn't affect too much whatever comes after in the chain. That's the strength. Now let's talk about priority. This is in case you have someone who is the moderator on a debate, or the dungeon master on a gameplay, or someone whose priority is higher. So if they are speaking, you should be able to hear them a lot better than anyone else. I'll go back to this part where 2 people are speaking at the same time, and I will increase the priority on track 1. So you'll be able to hear that person's voice a lot louder than the other person. So let's give this a listen.
Chocolate,
Eu vou falando outra coisa por cima e a gente vai vendo como é que o Automixer consegue resolver isso.
And of course, you can go the other way around. If for some reason that person's microphone should be lower in the mix, then, or even an extreme, you can go to 0, and that's effectively the same as muting that track. So you can see here, this track is muted. But if you want to, you can decrease the priority, and then that track will be quieter than the others if they are competing.
Chocolate,
Eu vou falando outra
morango,
coisa por cima e
baunilha.
a gente vai vendo.
And then in that case, you can barely hear track 1, which is my voice. And here I have the track priorities for up to 4 tracks. If you have more tracks, I didn't want to clutter the interface with at most 32 tracks, right? Because there is this limit of 64 tracks, 64 channels on a track. So the most I can have is 32 stereo tracks here in the Automixer. I didn't want to clutter the interface with 32 of these sliders that most people are never going to use anyway. So they're hidden. They're still there. If you want to change the track priority of track 31, you can. All you have to do is just come here to params and go to the param effect list. And then show in, for instance, the track header, or yeah, so you can show in track controls or the track envelope, and then you're able to change all the tracks, all the priorities for all the tracks. You won't be able to see this on the video, but yeah, there are 32 of these priorities. So for instance, if I wanted to change the track priority of track 15, I could show the track in track controls, and then it's here in the track controls, track priority of track 15. So there is no slider here, but you're still able to change this. And then finally, the last thing you see here is, of course, the meters, and they look the same as the meters on a mixer. So you have your input, the fader, like this fader, and then the output. So you see when I'm running the Automixer, you already saw in many cases the input level where the fader is and the corresponding output level. And this allows you to see the effect of the Automixer. You see which tracks are attenuated, and you see if the reaction time is good. Of course, you should trust your ears, but you can also see what's going on. And yeah, so that's the entirety of the Automixer. If you want to install it, then you should go to my GitHub page. And you take this URL, you come in here, Reaper, and you should have Repack installed. If you don't know how to do that, there will be a link in the description showing you how to install Repack. But all you have to do is just come here to import repository, space this URL, hit OK, make sure you synchronize and install all the packages. You will see the ReaFAQ Automixer in the list of plugins. And that's all. That's the Automixer, my modification of the existing Automixer in Repack. And it is a bit different in the way it works. The setup of the routing is different, but there are advantages to this. The first of which is it's a lot simpler to have things like this view, and you can change the reaction time for all tracks in one place. And once you set up the routing, you have only one instance of the plugin, so there is no need for inter-plugin communication, which led to bugs in the past in the original Automixer. So it's an architecture that is a bit more complicated to set up at first when you don't know what you're doing, but after watching this video, I'm sure you will be able to set this up very easily. And it is, I think, different in some ways. It's a trade-off. It's a bit more setup, but it is less error prone. It gives you some nice views, some different features that are not in the original Automixer. So I think you will like this. Give it a try. Let me know how it goes. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure you subscribe to this channel because soon I will submit, I'll post another video with a code review. And in case you are interested in learning JSFX or you just want to learn how the Automixer works, this is the code for it, and it's not a lot of code, and I will post another video in which I review this code and explain all the tricks that go into building the Automixer. It will be posted soon here in the channel, so subscribe for that, and thank you for watching. Have fun!